Right now, somewhere near you, there is a person who looks completely ordinary. They drive a used car. They wear unremarkable clothes. They do not talk about their portfolio at dinner. They do not post about their investments on social media. They are invisible in every financial conversation you have ever had. And that person, that quiet, boring, invisible person, has more money sitting in investment accounts than you will earn. In the next 15 years, if you keep living the way you are living right now, that is not an insult. That is a diagnosis. And the only question that matters in the next 25 minutes is whether you are willing to sit in that discomfort long enough to actually do something about it, because the gap between you and that person is not talent. It is not luck. It is not income. It is a decision, one decision made consistently over time. Let's go. If what I just said hit you somewhere real, somewhere uncomfortable, then you need to do one thing right now before we go any further. Hit that subscribe button. Everything I am about to show you in this video, the math, the strategy, the mindset shift that separates people who retire with dignity from people who retire with regret, financial advisors charge thousands of dollars for this. You are getting it for free, but only if you stay in the room. Subscribe now, hit the notification bell, and let's get into it. Because what comes next is going to change how you think about every dollar you earn for the rest of your life. Let me tell you what is actually wrong with you. And I mean that in the most direct, most productive way possible. Because the truth is the kindest thing I can give you right now. The problem is not that you do not make enough money. The problem is not that the market is rigged against you. The problem is not the economy, not interest rates, not your student loans, not your employer, not your zip code. The problem, and I need you to hear this clearly, is the way your brain has been trained to think about money and investing. Because somewhere along the way, you got sold a story. You got sold the idea that investing is supposed to feel exciting. You see a headline about somebody who put $10,000 into something and turned it into $100,000 in 18 months, and your brain lights up. You forward that article, you watch that video 3 times, you tell your friend about it at lunch, and unconsciously, without even realizing it, you start building a picture of what investing is supposed to look like. It is supposed to feel fast. It is supposed to feel thrilling. It is supposed to produce numbers on a screen that make your stomach flip. And so when someone, maybe a coworker, maybe a financial article, maybe me right now, tells you to open a brokerage account and put $50 a month into a broad market index fund, your brain rejects it before you even finish the sentence. It does not feel like enough. It does not feel like it is working. It does not feel like anything at all. And that feeling, that boredom, that restlessness, that quiet conviction that there must be something better out there that is costing you hundreds of thousands of dollars, that feeling is the most expensive feeling a person can have. I am not being dramatic. I am being mathematical, because here is what that feeling leads to in practice. It leads to waiting. You tell yourself you will start investing when you have more money. You will get serious about it when things settle down. You will open the account after the holidays, after the car is paid off, after the next raise, after the market dips, after you do a little more research. And 5 years go by, then 10. Then you are staring at 52 years old with a reasonable salary, a mortgage that is mostly handled, and almost nothing set aside for the decades ahead, when your body will no longer let you trade time for money. The waiting is not a minor inconvenience. The waiting is the wound. And I need you to stop treating it like a personality quirk and start treating it like the financial emergency that it actually is. You are not waiting because you are lazy. You are not waiting because you are stupid. You are waiting because your brain is doing exactly what brains are designed to do, optimizing for the present, avoiding discomfort, demanding certainty before taking action. Those instincts are ancient, and they served a real purpose. For a very long time, in the context of building long-term wealth, they are financially lethal. And the market does not care about your feelings. The math does not care about your timeline. Every single month that passes without a contribution is a month of compounding. You will never get back, and you are about to find out exactly what that costs in real dollars. Now I want to talk about compounding. And before your eyes glaze over, because you think you already know what compounding is, I want you to stay with me, because there is a difference between knowing what something is and actually feeling it in not your bones. Most people know the definition. Almost nobody actually lives by what it means. And that gap between knowing and living is worth roughly $700,000 over the course of an investing lifetime. Let me show you exactly what I mean. Compounding is your money making money, and then that new money making more money, and then all of that combined, money making even more money automatically, repeatedly, year after year. Whether you are watching it or not, the mathematics are not complicated. The emotional experience of it, however, is brutal in the early years, and that brutality is exactly where most people fail. You put in $50 a month. After 1 year, you have somewhere around $600 plus whatever modest growth the market provided. After 2 years, maybe $1,300. After 5 years, maybe $4,000. You look at that number and you do the mental math and you think, I have been doing this for 5 years and I have $4,000. That is nothing. I could have made that in a month if I had just picked the right stock. And there it is. There is the moment. That specific moment of doubt and disappointment and mathematical impatience is the moment where the majority of people quietly stop. They do not make a dramatic announcement. They do not pull the money out in anger. They just stop putting money in. Life gets busy. The contribution gets skipped once, then twice, then the habit dissolves entirely, and the account just sits there, frozen, doing almost nothing. But here's what the people who ignore that feeling and keep feeding the account through boredom and doubt and every market crash that comes along. Here is what they end up with. Picture two people. The first one starts at 25 years old. She is not wealthy. She is not earning a six-figure salary. She puts in $200 a month, and she does not stop. She does not stop when the market drops. She does not stop when life gets expensive. She does not stop when every headline is screaming that the economy is collapsing. She contributes $200 every single month for 40 years, earning the kind of average annual return that a diversified stock market fund has historically delivered over long time frames. By 65 years old, she has accumulated something approaching $1.2 million. $200 a month, 40 years, patience. Now the second person starts at 35, same $200 a month, same discipline, same average returns, but he started 10 years later. So he only contributes for 30 years instead of 40. He ends up with roughly $550,000. Same monthly amount, same consistency, same market, 10 years of difference. And the gap between them is nearly $700,000. $700,000, that is not a rounding error. That is not a technicality. That is the entire financial difference between a retirement lived in freedom and a retirement lived in fear. And the only thing that created it was the decision about when to start. That is what the waiting costs. That is what boredom costs. That is what telling yourself you will get to it later actually costs when you measure it honestly at the end of a real life. Now I want to address something that is harder than starting, and honestly harder than almost anything else in the investment world. I want to talk about what happens when you have been doing everything right, contributing consistently, staying patient, watching the account grow, and then the market drops 40%. Not a little dip, not a bad week, a full, terrifying, portfolio-destroying collapse of the kind that happened in 2008, the kind that happened in the early 2000s, the kind that will happen again at some point in your investing lifetime, because it always does. You log into your account and the number you see is not what it was. It is not close to what it was. The money you spent years building, the money that represents hundreds of monthly contributions and thousands of hours of disciplined restraint, it looks like it has been cut in half on a screen in a matter of weeks. And a voice starts talking to you. That voice is calm at first, and then it gets louder, and it says, get out, cut your losses, move everything to cash, and wait until things stabilize. This is different this time. The system is broken. Get out now before it gets worse. That voice has cost ordinary investors more money than any market crash in the history of personal finance. Think about the people who had been steadily building wealth through the late 1990s. They had real portfolios. They had years of contributions working for them. And then the dot-com crash came, and they panicked and they sold. They locked in their losses, moved to cash, and told themselves they would get back in once things calmed down, and the market recovered without them. Or think about 2008, investors who had been building wealth for 20 years watched their portfolios get cut in half, and some of them did the worst thing they could have done. They sold everything near the bottom. They crystallized losses that the market itself healed from within a few years. But they were no longer in the market to participate in that healing. They were sitting on the sidelines waiting for certainty, and certainty never came because certainty never comes. Here is the painful, counterintuitive, mathematically irrefutable truth about market crashes. By the time you feel the maximum urgency to sell, the crash has already happened. The damage is already done. Selling at that moment does not protect you from the fall. You have already fallen. All selling does at that point is guarantee that you will not be in the market when it rises again. And history is ruthlessly consistent about the fact that it does rise again. The people who came out of every major market downturn in American history, ahead of where they started, were not the people who timed it correctly. They were the people who did the hardest, least emotionally satisfying thing imaginable. They looked at their account balance in the middle of the worst headlines they'd ever seen, and they said, I am not touching it. Some of them even kept contributing. They bought more shares at prices that felt terrifying and turned out to be historic opportunities. That is not courage in any romantic sense. That is discipline. That is understanding that the market on sale is not a market to run from. And the alternative, the path of keeping your money in a savings account that earns almost nothing while inflation quietly devours its purchasing power year after year, is also a risk, a quieter risk, a risk that feels safe because nothing dramatic is happening. But over 20 or 30 years, the math is devastating. Inflation does not need you to panic. It just needs time, and it has all the time in the world. Now I want to talk to a specific person who is sitting there right now thinking it is already too late. Maybe you are 45, maybe you are 50, maybe you are 55 years old and you have very little set aside, and you have been telling yourself for years that you missed the window, that the math no longer works in your favor, that the compounding train left the station without you, and there is nothing left to do but accept it. I am going to tell you directly that this is a lie you are telling yourself, and it is the most expensive lie you will ever believe if you keep believing it. If you are 48 years old and you start putting $300 a month into a diversified investment account today, not a savings account, not a money market account, an actual investment account in a broad market index fund, and you do that consistently for 20 years, you will arrive at 68 years old with more money than the majority of Americans retire with, period. It will not be the same as if you had started at 25. The math does not pretend otherwise, and neither will I, but it will be enough to make a real, material, life-changing difference. It will be the difference between retiring with options and retiring with panic. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. That is not a motivational poster. That is arithmetic. And the arithmetic does not care how you feel about it. It just keeps running. But here's the piece that almost nobody talks about because it is less comfortable than discussing index funds and contribution rates. The reason most people are not building wealth is not that they lack information. They know they should be investing. They have heard about compound interest. They understand intellectually that starting earlier is better than starting later, and that consistency beats timing every single time. They know all of this, and they are still not doing it. They will watch this video, nod along, feel genuinely moved in the moment, and then close the tab and change nothing. Why? Because knowledge does not change behavior. Identity changes behavior. The story you tell yourself about who you are and what is financially possible for you, that is what changes behavior. If somewhere underneath your rational mind you believe that real wealth is for other people, for people with the right background, or the right opportunities, or the right family, then no amount of information will move you because your actions will always follow your deepest beliefs, not your surface level knowledge. So I'm asking you to make a shift right now, not a financial shift, a perceptual one. Stop being someone who plans to invest someday and start being someone who invests today. With what you have, the majority of American millionaires are not people who inherited fortunes. They are not people who struck gold on a single investment. They are people with ordinary incomes who lived below those incomes and invested the difference every single month for decades. That story is not glamorous. It does not make for great television, but it is the most honest, most replicable, most accessible path to financial security that exists, and it is available to far more people than currently believe it is available to them. So let me give you the actual playbook, because everything I have said up to this point means nothing if you walk away without a concrete action. So here it is, and I am going to strip it down to exactly what you need, because the complexity is often what paralyzes people, and the complexity is mostly unnecessary noise. You need three things. You need a brokerage account, you need a low-cost index fund, and you need the discipline to contribute to that account every single month and leave it completely alone when the market gets frightening. That is the entire foundation. Everything else, the tax optimization, the sector allocation, the rebalancing strategy, all of that is refinement. It matters eventually, but it is irrelevant until the foundation exists. Open an account with any major brokerage. Fidelity, Vanguard, Schwab, it does not matter. The process takes less time than watching a single episode of anything on streaming. Find a broad market index fund with a low expense ratio, something that tracks the total U.S. stock market or the S&P 500. Set up an automatic monthly contribution and then, and this is the most important instruction I will give you, do not touch it. Do not log in every day to check the balance. Do not make emotional decisions when the news is bad. Do not move it to cash when you get scared. Just let it run. Now, I want to address the objection that is forming in your mind right now, because I can predict it with near certainty. You are thinking that you do not have enough to make a difference. You are thinking that $25 or $50 a month is so small that it is barely worth the effort of setting up the account. Here's the answer to that. The amount matters less than the habit. I mean that completely. The act of starting, the act of making investment a non-negotiable line item in your monthly budget before you spend on anything discretionary, that act is worth more in the long run than the specific dollar figure you start with. Because the habit scales. As your income grows, your contribution grows. As your contribution grows, your account grows. As your account grows, compounding accelerates. The whole machine runs on the habit, and the habit has to be built somewhere. And it has to be built now. $25 a month invested at 25 years old becomes something real by 65. It is not $1.2 million, but it is something real. And something real is infinitely more than the nothing that waiting always produces. Here's where we land. And I want you to stay with me for 60 more seconds, because this is the part that matters most. You have two choices right now, and they are the only two choices that exist. You can close this video, tell yourself that you already knew most of what I said, that you will get started soon, that you just need to wait for the right moment, the right amount, the right circumstances. And you can walk directly back into the financial drift that most people spend their entire lives inside of. Or you can do one thing today. One thing, open a brokerage account. Not tomorrow, not after the weekend. Today, before you watch another video, before you scroll another feed, before you do anything else with the next 30 minutes of your life, make the minimum first deposit. Find a total market index fund. Set up the smallest monthly automatic contribution your budget can handle and commit to not touching it for a decade. That is it. That is the entire gap between the person who retires with $1 million and the person who retires with regret. It was never a secret. It was never complicated. It was never about having the right information. It was about making the decision to act on what you already know. The market will go up and it will go down. The headlines will terrify you and then they will be forgotten. Another crisis will come and another recovery will follow it. Every single time. The only variable inside your control is what you do today. Start small, stay consistent, think in decades, and the next time you meet someone who looks completely ordinary and turns out to be quietly, patiently, profoundly wealthy, you will not feel that low, uncomfortable feeling in your chest. You will feel recognition because you will be doing exactly what they did. Go start.